What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about Ayo Dosunmu's recent comments on how he's been studying this game and how he's poised to have a very big sophomore season for the Chicago Bulls, and he may be the starting point guard for that. We're also going to follow up on the video from yesterday, which I did the best moves of AKME so far in their tenure of running the Chicago Bulls. But this time, we're going to talk about some of the worst deals they've made so far. We're going to all that and more on today's Chicago Bulls Central.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
All right, Bulls fans, what's going on? You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me on Chicago Bulls Central. And so I'm still riding high off some Chicago things going on, a very positive vibe around here right now at It Is What It Is Studios. But nonetheless, listen, Ayo Dosunmu had a recent interview and it was on What Up Cuz. And so he said that he spent a lot of time in the offseason watching film and studying this game. And he said, you can expect me to come out and just be better in every aspect. Now, the reason why that may be poignant and a huge factor for the Chicago, well, there's two reasons really, is that especially if Lonzo Ball is not ready to go, which all signs are pointing to, everything's pointing to Lonzo Ball not being ready by the start of the season, Ayo Dosunmu is likely going to be in that starting point guard position. And so him being ready to just increase what he already did last season, as a starter, he averaged over 11 points per game. I think like right under 5 assists per game and like 3 rebounds per game. Don't quote me exactly on those numbers. They're around there. I know it was like 10.9 points per game, so basically 11. So he had a solid starting point guard. But yeah, was it anything like, and we know he kind of even fell off towards the back end of that season. He hit that rookie wall or whatever you want to call it, and his numbers dipped a little bit. But Ayo Dosunmu working on his body, working on his conditioning, being ready for the rigors of the NBA season a little bit better than what he came into in his rookie season. We already know about the 5-on-5 workouts that he competed with DeMar DeRozan and how he's mentored him. Ayo Dosunmu is going to be huge and hopefully having a huge impact for the Chicago Bulls next season, especially, like I said, as he assumes that starting point guard role while Lonzo Ball is out. But there's another big reason for this as well. As we've already talked about very heavily, and one of the things that is going to be on one of the lists that we talk about later is that Ayo Dosunmu is going to be a free agent at the end of the season. Now, he's a restricted free agent. And so it works a little bit different, right? So it's not the typical restricted free agency that works for most players that are coming in, especially first round picks, to have that 3-year deal. They don't have full bird rights on Ayo Dosunmu. They have what's called early bird rights. So that means that they can offer him a contract. I can't remember the exact numbers. There's actually a limit on the amount of contract that he can get. Now, that's why it is important that, the salary cap increase for the NBA overall is going to help the Bulls be able to re-sign him. But basically what it boils down to is that the Bulls cannot exceed the salary cap to re-sign Ayo Dosunmu. They have to use whatever cap space they have. So that is going to factor in when you have a free agent like that. And then they can use the Gilbert Arenas rule, or provision, I think is what it's called, in which they can re-sign him, but it makes the back end of that contract heavily backloaded and quite expensive in a situation like that. So I don't think there's going to be a situation in which Ayo Dosunmu does not stay a Chicago Bull. Again, is my overconfidence in that could come back to bite me and the franchise in the ass? Yes. But Ayo Dosunmu being a free agent this early, him and having the unique opportunity to be a starter and hopefully make a huge impact in that starting role early on in the season, it's really going to go into what his contract could be. Like I said, it's kind of limited. He doesn't have the true restricted free agency where he can get like the same amount of increases and raises and things like that, but it's still that nonetheless. And while he is a Chicago kid, he loves the city, he plays for the franchise that he grew up watching and idolizing, things like that. But anytime there's agents involved, anytime there's a potential for other teams and that poison pill deal that's rarely used but can be a thing, it's some, I wouldn't say a huge bit of cause for concern in that, but there is some in that. But either way, like I said, I'm not worried about it too much. And I think most Bulls fans shouldn't worry about it. I think that Ayo Dosunmu was going to be a Chicago Bull for a long time, and him being ready and even watching this tape and the work ethic and everything that goes into Ayo Dosunmu and who he is going to pay big dividends off for the Chicago Bulls, especially while Lonzo Ball's out and over the course of his career. And you got to also think and factor in some too, is that with the injury concerns surrounding Lonzo Ball and the fact that it seems like he suffers at least a minor injury to a significant injury every season so far, you have to having a built-in insurance for him in Ayo Dosunmu and Alex Caruso is is highly important for the Chicago Bulls. And, outside of just the Lonzo of it all, Ayo Dosunmu and what he flashed, the value in having a second round pick that can turn into the player that we all see Ayo Dosunmu turning into, and even what he gave last season is just huge for a franchise that doesn't have their own first round pick this season. We'll see if we end up getting the Portland pick, but getting the most value out of the picks that you do have is going to be important for this front office over the next 3 to 4 years, as we have given up first round picks in this upcoming draft to San Antonio. We still owe Orlando another first round pick, and we owe I think of them another first round pick after that as well, but I may be wrong on that one. But so with the draft capital that they have given in, getting the most value out of players and having players that truly develop, Dalen Terry as well, hopefully he develops too, it's going to be important for this, and it's good that we have Ayo Dosunmu at least showing those flashes so far. All right, next little bit of news, very minor news before we get into the list, is Kobe Williams, the brother of Patrick Williams, is getting a tryout with the Windy City Bulls. Is it anything important? Is it anything tantamount? No. I mean, at the end of the day, are they probably doing Patrick Williams a solid by bringing in his brother? Probably. It's not anything out of the normal, kind of happens around the NBA anyway. So, it is what it is there. I just wanted to mention it as a piece of news. But let's go ahead and get into the list that we're here for. Yesterday, we did cover the best moves by AK and Eversley so far in their tenure as a Chicago Bull. And, well, not as a Chicago Bull, but leading the Chicago Bulls. So we have to keep the same energy and talk about some of the worst deals. Now, one of the first ones that came to mind, and even when I said yesterday, is that the Daniel Gafford trade was not going to be something that I list on this, but shout out to Winton Mahorn, who is one of the first subscribers of this channel ever. He's literally been around, I think, since day 5 of this channel ever being a thing. So shout out to him for just being there and being a supporter and being knowledgeable. And so I'm going to put up his comment. So before I put up his comment, I had always been of the mindset that the Daniel Gafford trade was not one of the worst trades, not something that I necessarily looked at as a negative, because he signed a 3-year, about $50 million extension with the Washington Wizards. And so he was never going to get that contract with the Chicago Bulls. It just never was going to happen. They weren't going to pay that much money for a backup center. So I've always been of the mindset that he was going to get that deal. And to me, it's always kept it off the worst list, because you could have lost him for nothing. And you probably would have if a team was going to offer him that type of contract. But shout out to Winton Mahorn, who now the comment's going to be down here, who mentioned that it would have been better to keep Daniel Gafford for as long as that we had him, as long as we could have had him on that rookie level deal, because what we ended up getting back for him in Troy Brown Jr. really turned out to be nothing. It turned out to be nothing. And so I went back over this to kind of take a look at this. And again, shout out to Winton on this one, because it made me really think and reevaluate this deal and take a look at it of, okay, now with that mindset and the hindsight that we have now in that, and knowing what we ended up getting back for Daniel Gafford and what it turned into at the time, I can understand the Troy Brown thing. Was Troy Brown ever going to turn into a star? No, but they probably saw a position that he could have turned out on the wing, be a 3D guy, and it just didn't work out that way. But now looking at the Daniel Gafford deal, and one of the things that I broke out in looking at this is Daniel Gafford has still been he's still on his rookie level contract. This season is the last season for it. That extension that he signed with the Washington Wizards actually doesn't kick in into the 2023-24 season. So that means that when the Chicago Bulls traded Daniel Gafford, they could have had 2 more full seasons of him on a rookie level deal, in which last season he was paid $1.7 million. This upcoming season, he's going to be paid $1.9 million for a backup center that kind of brings everything that you would have wanted as a backup with Nikola Vucevic. So that really did make me repaint, and this is one of the things that I do on this channel. I always say, I don't have all the answers, right? I give my opinions, but that's always changing as information comes and new perspectives are gained. And shout out to Winton again. I'm going to keep saying that because he really did provide a new perspective on that some Bulls fans just, we should have kept Gafford. We should have kept Gafford. And Winton actually going into the detail of saying, hey, but look at it. We ended up losing Troy Brown Jr. for nothing. We could have had 2 additional seasons of Daniel Gafford, 2 full more seasons, 3 in reality, right? We could have had 3 more seasons of him at a rookie scale deal. And that does change some things in this. When you look at what Daniel Gafford does provide, the defense, the pick and roll, like Alonzo Ball, Daniel Gafford, pick and roll and on fast breaks would have been dangerous. When you look at that and how that could have changed the complexity of the Chicago Bulls season last season and this upcoming season before we really would have had to worry about extension for Daniel Gafford, it completely changes the outlook of that deal, and it absolutely does make it. And I have to rescind myself on this one. It absolutely does make it one of the worst deals that AK and Eversley have done so far. I get it. Did they get back some value for it? Did they see Daniel Gafford as the starting level center? No, I will even say that it seems like Washington has moved on from him as a starting level center as well. His minutes have gone down considerably from the first season when they got him to last season. So we'll see how that continues to go. But when you look at that now, in what we could have had at a cheap contract, even less than what we're paying Andre Drummond right now. Yes, is Andre Drummond a better rebounder? Yes. Has Andre Drummond been in this league longer? Yes. But it could have eliminated that. And that money that we did end up spending on Daniel Gafford could have gone to that stretch four that so many of us want while paying less. So it does kind of reframe that deal. And I do have to put that deal on this list. All right. The next one up is kind of what I alluded to when I talked about Ayo Dosunmu. Not giving Ayo Dosunmu the 3-year rookie deal is going to be something that in the long run does hurt the Bulls more. Does it hurt them per se? Because no. And the reason why I don't put this, it's not as egregious as some of the other things, is because I still absolutely think Ayo Dosunmu was going to be a Bull, and he was going to get that contract. Either he was going to shine either way. It all works out with Ayo Dosunmu being a Bull, but like it does show a little bit of short-sightedness that you could have given him that 3-year deal, which could have saved you some money in this upcoming season with the salary cap increasing more than what people expected and giving you a little bit more room to do some other things. Now you kind of have limited yourself. As I said in there, which you have to give him a certain contract that fits in a certain parameter, but also you don't have that, you don't have that extra year of a team-friendly deal. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of short-sightedness on him. Like I said, not as egregious, but I did want to put it on this list again. And just to be clear here as well, this list is not an order of importance. It's not an order in which one is worse than the others. It's just me just talking about worst deals that this front office has made. Another one kind of in that is signing Denzel Valentine to a qualifying offer. I get it at the time. They looked at him as a possible 3-and-D guy or possible somebody who can just come in and stretch the floor. But at that point in time, we all knew what Denzel Valentine was. The writing was on the wall. We saw what he was and what his impact was going to be. And considering that you gave him, it was one season. It was $4.6 million. But at the end of the day, you couldn't trade him with that, right? He gets a quote-unquote no trade clause because he's an unrestricted free agent. He was an unrestricted free agent at the end of next season. So even signing him to that deal for $4.64 million, you couldn't move him. He had veto power with that. It wasn't a true no trade clause, but he could veto any deal. So it's really looking at the value of what they could have did with that money, with that $4.64 million that they end up giving to Denzel, who we already knew was trash. A little bit of a short-sightedness there as well. Now, the next one up, and I knew people would go crazy if I did not mention this deal on here, and this has to be the biggest one that I've seen so far. And again, just to let everyone know, this is not a ranking of deals that they didn't make. So I know a lot of people are going to be saying, well, they didn't make this deal. They didn't include this one. They could have made this trade. They didn't make a bigger move at free agents. The trade deadline last season. I'm not ranking deals that they did not make. I'm ranking deals that they actually did make and moves that they actually did make. And so far, the biggest one, even though I don't see this as big of a negative as some Bulls fans, trading for Nikola Vucevic, while everything, Wendell Carter, Otto Porter Jr., trade those. It was the 2 first-round picks. You're giving up the younger talent. And yes, at that time, I think people got to remember too, we weren't trading for the Nikola Vucevic that we saw last season. We were trading for Nikola Vucevic at that time, who was an all-star, who was a 20-10 guy. So yes, you're going to have to give up a little bit more for that. They gave up a young player that still had some potential in Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., who ended up going and winning a title, right? But the 2 first-round picks, now those 2 first-round picks did have lottery protections with them. We already saw what one of those picks turned into in Franz Wagner, who was another player that we could have used, but then also giving up a future first-round pick. Now, what I said yesterday in yesterday's episode, that they tried to offset that by also getting a similar first-round pick back with similar protections from Portland. And if that conveys, it really does change at least how I view this deal. If we end up getting Portland's first-round pick, and it's right around where we would have picked anyway as a playoff team, and then being a playoff team, and hell, it could even be better than our own first-round pick would have been if we're higher up in the standings than Portland, and Portland basically barely scrapes into the playoffs, we get the better end of that deal. But giving up the 2 first-round picks and the younger player for an aging center who ended up having I wouldn't necessarily call it a regression year, but had not the impact that some people expected initially when we made that deal in the following season. Now, some people have even said in the comments that Wendell went on to have a better. No, Wendell, if you look at Wendell's, the averages, the percentages, he had the same season he had with the Chicago Bulls. It's just he had more opportunity because he was on a worse team. So I don't really look at that and saying, hey, we should have kept Wendell because Wendell progressed so much in that year. No, Wendell was on a team that was worse, that had better, he had more opportunity than what he would have had on the Chicago Bulls team. And even Nikola Vucevic on that same team when it was terrible averaged more. So that's how I view that. I'm not saying everyone needs to view it that way, but I do have to list the Nikola Vucevic deal on here specifically for those 2 first-round picks. Now, some would say that that's just the cost of doing business. But with some of the other ways that they've shown these deals and the intelligence that AK and Eversley have shown, you still got, like, you gave up basically 3 first-round picks and Al-Farouq Aminu, who, honestly, taking on that salary anyway from the beginning, like, bringing that in was, they ended up being able to work Al-Farouq Aminu in for the DeMar DeRozan deal. So shout out to them for that. But that was a ton of bad salary. Like, you're taking on that bad salary that luckily you were able to move, but you still gave up 2 first-round picks and a young promising player in that. Has to be included on this list as well for me. But that is my list for today. Let me know any other deals that you guys think I have may miss that you think were some of the worst deals that AK and Eversley have made. Again, this is not a measurement of deals that they did not make. This is a measurement of deals that they actually did make and how you rank those, and if you rank those as deals that weren't quite as beneficial to the Bulls as one would have hoped. Let me know all that down below. Thank you for being the best part of Chicago Bulls Central. Make sure you're following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text and or voicemail, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number 1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.